Hello and welcome. This is Captain Tom. Welcome aboard the Silverwind. I am joined by my co-host and intergalactic robot friend Wilson. And today we are going to be reading Genesis chapter 25 and explaining it. And we have called that From Abraham to Isaac. There's going to be a transition in the story between these two patriarchs, right? These two generations. And we are going to go back to the system where we were at last time at Uranus. So let's just go ahead and head on over there. Let's see here. We'll do it. We'll do it in the far view here. Let's see. All right, that should do the trick. Let's go ahead and turn that music down and hit the warp drive. So let's see here. Last week we went to Uranus. We talked about it a little bit. And this time we're gonna actually go to one of the moons. I don't know which moon yet, but so let's see here. I think we're good to go. Yeah, that should get us there. Easy day. Well, Wilson, I'm not gonna call it the actual name. I'm doing this intentionally, right? So how do you guys explain it to a intergalactic robot human internet? Maybe like the collective consciousness on human internet would be like, you know, adults reverting to like their 15-year-old selves. I'm not gonna say the actual name of the planet because I'm gonna get my voice clipped. So and here is actually, we need to go to one of the moons, Wilson, but any moon will do, just like the closest one. But yeah, so beautiful planet, by the way. Talked a little bit about it last week, and I'm just gonna leave it to Wilson to pick a moon to go to. So let's see which one he decides. Let me see, make sure we're good here. Yeah. Oh, here we go. And it looks like, ooh, that's Miranda. So let's go ahead, make sure we lock this in here. Easy day. Here we go. That's the close view though. I don't want the close view. Let's get there we go. Perfect. This is actually great pick, Wilson. So this is a really interesting moon. This is probably, of all the moons of the solar system, this one really stands out because it's kind of this crazy patchwork, almost, you know, impossible nonsense for a one of these ice worlds that revolve around these planets to look like. So I've actually got some let's see here, archived in here somewhere. I've got some images for you guys that should give us a better detail. So NASA has taken some images here. So this kind of gives you a better idea. So some close-ups to it, but take a look at this for a second. I mean, you have these crazy patterns all over the place on it. And just like it's a complete mystery to science, by the way. They have no idea how this happened. There's some theories that maybe there was a bunch of different things that collided together, or there was a moon that got shattered by a really big asteroid and then reformed. But then that's kind of the same idea with what happened to Earth and its moon. It got shattered, but the Earth doesn't look like this, right? And so we have, it's just this crazy patchwork, some really deep cliffs. I think some of the deepest cliffs in the solar system for any moon. I think at 20 kilometers is the deepest cliff on here. And then, just these patterns just seem to make absolutely no sense. I mean, you've got these, in some places it looks like it's been brushed over by a rake or a big brush. Other places it looks like it's gotten a lot of impacts, and other places it hasn't. So there's something odd going on here with this one. There's also another theory. This would be with the the typical, like the materialistic view of it, is that perhaps something warm hit it in different places, it melted it, and it reformed in different ways. Regardless, though, it's a bit of an anomaly, but it's kind of consistent with what we're seeing in the solar system. All of these worlds are different in some way or another, and so that's of course, once again, the theological perspective of this, the idea that there would be a creator who uniquely created everything, it would make sense for him to make things different and intentionally make things bafflingly different. So, that's the theistic perspective is an easier argument to make. You could just say simply that, well, the creator created it that way because he felt like it, right? Just to make something that would, be jaw-dropping and a little bit interesting. So yeah, let's see here. There we go. We'll take those away. Let's go ahead. We're going to go to the library. This will be our, our view in the library as we read the story. So with that, let's see here. Oh yeah, Julianne Wilson's got it. Heck yeah. So perfect. Yeah, that was a good flyby. It looked a little crazy, Wilson. You drive like you're, I don't know. You drive kind of crazy. So let's see here. All right. We're going to go ahead, hit that transition scene, Wilson, and I'll see you guys in the reading room. All right. So here we are. We've got, man, you got to love this space. It is absolutely amazing. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of recap. So last week, Genesis 24, we had kind of this whole long story that retold itself about halfway through of essentially, Rebecca and Isaac and how they came together. And so we had a servant from Abraham who, on an oath and taking that oath very seriously, went all the way to the land where Abraham was from, where his family was at, in order to find a wife for Isaac, who's Rebecca. And yeah, it was just kind of a good, clean story of everyone doing really good things. There was no really human drama or anything going wrong or sinfulness or anything like that. So it's kind of a nice, moment in the Bible for that sort of thing. And so a beautiful moment. It's supposed to be very romantic. And so that's how Isaac didn't end up marrying a Canaanite and married someone that was, in his father's family, which was important back then for kind of keeping that distance from the neighboring people, because those people are destined for destruction and are very ungodly and that sort of thing. We saw a glimpse of that with Sodom and Gomorrah, and there will be that whole thing is going to be revisited in the future. So let's go ahead and jump into the next part here, which we are going to be basically kind of wrapping up the era of Abraham here, and then going to be moving into his son. So yeah, with that, let's go ahead. I guess we'll go to one of these views right here, and we'll start the reading. Abraham married another wife, whose name was Keturah. She gave birth to Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan was the father of Sheba and Dedan. Dedan's descendants were the Asherites, Letusites, and Limites. Midian's sons were Ephah, Epher, Enoch, Abidah, and Eldah. These were all descendants of Abraham through Keturah. Now, this is one of those very overlooked places in the Bible and in the story in general. And to be fair, it's not one of the most important parts of the story. But this is, once again, kind of showing where different people groups who were definitely active and alive and involved with Israel while this stuff was being written. This stuff was written during the time of Moses and that sort of thing. So this is being written a few hundred years after the fact. So this is basically kind of setting the stage of hey, these people over here and these people over here, this is where they came from. Some of these people are distant relatives of yours, while these people are not. And so this is kind of listing those people who would be distant relatives under the other wife of Abraham, which she probably would have married after, Sarah had passed away. And so, yeah, so it's just kind of an interesting note there that, he continued to have more children later on in life, but none of those children would inherit the covenant that God had promised through Isaac, right? So none of these children are basically given that. It's very much like Ishmael. He's the first son of Abraham, but he doesn't have the inheritance that Isaac has. And so, with that, he had to send Ishmael away, which is going to be very similar to what we're going to read right here. So let's go ahead and jump to this next part right here. It's just going to be a few verses, and we will carry on. Abraham gave everything he owned to his son Isaac, but before he died, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them off to a land in the east away from Isaac. All right, I just want to read that point real quick because I was already basically about to talk about that, and that's that he made sure that he held up to what God had told him. Hey, this promise is going to be through Isaac, but it doesn't mean he just abandoned these other children. He had to send them away. He had to separate them from his inheritance to Isaac. He didn't want there to be infighting or anything like that. But he did it in a loving way. He didn't just tell them to kick rocks. He gave them gifts. Sent them away and they obviously all became successful enough to have nations come from them. And this also fulfills a promise that was made earlier by God to Abraham, saying that he would be a father of many descendants. I'm pretty sure I got that note right here if we want to find the exact verse here. Let's see. Might find it here in a second. I don't think it's this part right here. But it is a little bit earlier on. So this is basically another fulfillment of something that God had promised earlier to him, that he wouldn't just be the father of a great nation, but of many nations. So there we go, Father Abraham. So let's go ahead. Now that we got that, we're going to basically kind of conclude Abraham's story here a little bit. So we'll just kind of read on from there to the next part, I think to verse 11 here. Let's see. Abraham lived for 175 years, and he died at a ripe old age, having lived a long and satisfying life. He breathed his last and joined his ancestors in death. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, near Mamre in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite. This was the field Abraham had purchased from the Hittites and where he had buried his wife Sarah. After Abraham's death, God blessed his son Isaac, who settled near Beer-lahai Roi in the Negev. All right. So a couple of interesting things there. So obviously some of the stuff that was built upon earlier in the story, that plot of land that he bought where he buried Sarah, this is also where he's going to be buried. And it's kind of interesting that both his sons Isaac and Ishmael went to bury him. And I think this is kind of a hint that Ishmael wasn't completely estranged from Abraham. As Ishmael grew older, he probably visited and had some kind of relationship with Abraham, even though he wouldn't have the inheritance from Abraham as the oldest. So it's kind of an interesting situation there. He was respectful enough to be there with Isaac to help bury his father. So this is kind of an interesting little detail right there. But 175 years. So after the flood, there is, for the most part, people don't tend to live more than 100 years and that sort of thing. But there are these exceptions in the Bible for people who are just kind of seen as, the great men of faith, such as Abraham here, and different people like that who are just really blessed or something like that. And they get this blessing of kind of a long life here. And you'll see that with the patriarchs kind of going down for a few generations. You're going to see them living a very long lifespan. And, there's just part of the blessing that God has them on them, not because they deserved it or earned it, but because God had chosen a people for himself and has a plan essentially to undo the event that we saw that occurred, with sin, or at least to not undo it, but to basically solve the problem of sin. And so he has his plan, and he's basically working through this family right here. So pretty cool stuff. We'll go ahead and jump into the next part right here. Yeah, so it's going to be moving. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing. So it's done talking about Abraham, but if you actually do all the math right here, so when Isaac's sons, as Jacob and Esau, which are going to be introduced here in a second, when they get to basically, Abraham is still alive until they're about 15 years old. So just kind of understand that in the back of your mind, that even though it's not mentioning Abraham anymore, according to the numbers here, he is technically still alive through the story that's being told right now, in with Isaac up to a certain point. So yeah, he would have seen his grandsons Jacob and Esau. So yeah, I think I said that correctly. Okay, so let's go ahead and just get into the reading. This is the account of the family of Ishmael, the son of Abraham, through Hagar, Sarah's Egyptian servant. Here is a list by their names and clans of Ishmael's descendants. The oldest was I'm sorry, let's go ahead and let me try that again. The oldest was Nebaioth, followed by Kedar, Adbel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Napish, and Kidma. These 12 sons of Ishmael became the followers of 12 tribes named after them, listed accordingly to the places they settled and camped. Ishmael lived for 137 years. Then he breathed his last and joined his ancestors in death. Ishmael's descendants occupied the region from Havilah to Shur, which is east of Egypt in the direction of Asher. There they lived in open hostility toward all their relatives. Some interesting details right here that are pretty important. So we have another fulfillment that God had promised earlier. First off, he promised that he was going to bless Ishmael and he was going to bless Hagar. We see that Ishmael is blessed with a long life. He has 12 sons, and this was also something that was predicted. And I do have this note right here. So let's see here. I think it's going to be Genesis 16:12. This is kind of a little foretelling. Back there, it said when it's referring to Ishmael, he would be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility towards all of his brothers. So we get, that part right there when it's talking about how there's hostility between one another. The picture is this, that he has these 12 sons. They become, leaders of their own nations. And there's a lot of infighting, right? So this would become the people of the Arabs, right? And so this and this isn't just something that the Bible teaches. This is something that even like Muhammad and Islam teach, that hey, our ancestors came from Ishmael. They trace their ancestry there, and even secular historians believe that that's probably a pretty good guess, and that's probably accurate, that that's the case. And so we see that there's a multitude of people from Ishmael. And yeah, he's got the 12 princes. It was predicted he would have 12 princes under him. And then you have this situation where there's a lot of hostility. So Arab basically comes from the word nomad, or basically that's what it means. And so he was kind of a man of the wilderness. He was a bit of a nomad himself, and his sons were, very much the same way. And so you kind of have these, nations that came from that. It's just kind of really cool to see the Bible essentially nation crafting everything that we see today, and we can trace back and go, yeah, this fits pretty well. It seems pretty accurate. So that's interesting stuff there, and that kind of ends things with Ishmael right there. And yeah, so we'll go ahead and move forward from that point. Let's go ahead and let's see. I'll take this view right here. Easy day. Continue to read. Let's get into Isaac a little bit. This is the account of the family of Isaac, the son of Abraham. When Isaac was 40 years old, he married Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean from Padan Aram, and the sister of Laban the Aramean. Isaac pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was unable to have children. The Lord answered Isaac's prayer, and Rebekah became pregnant with twins. But the two children struggled with each other in her womb. So she went to ask the Lord about it. "Why is this happening to me?" she asked. And the Lord told her, "The sons in your womb will become two nations. From the very beginning, the two nations will be rivals. One nation will be stronger than the other, and your older son will serve your younger son." All right, that's a block of text there to kind of break down a little bit. So I actually really like this whole kind of scene that's going on right now. So we have, Isaac is pleading to the Lord. So we actually have a little bit of a mirror here to Abraham. When Abraham was having issues with Sarah not being able to get pregnant, there was a moment where him and Sarah tried to take it into their own hands through Hagar to try and make it happen for themselves. That didn't work out too well. It created a lot of problems, in general, both in how the treatment of Hagar, Abram having to send Ishmael away the way that he did. It created a lot of heartache and a lot of problems in the household. What we see here, Isaac is actually, not tripping up on this. He's just going straight to the Lord. He probably has, he definitely has Abraham still alive at this time, probably to console him and give him good advice, because Abram's walked down that road. He's like, listen, just go to the Lord. You can trust him. And so Isaac does just that. And God, is basically able to make it so that Rebecca can have children. And so it almost seems like it's just a very quick little thing, but it almost seems like this was kind of a little test from God to Isaac. Obviously, Isaac was going to have kids through Rebecca. God had crafted this entire situation. So just a little test right there, and he seemed to pass it with flying colors. So that's really nice. And then we have the situation with Rebecca, where Rebecca is now talking directly to God. It's almost it could either be that, like the gift of prophecy kind of thing, where God is like directly communicating with her. It could also be, someone communicating, to her, kind of like Abraham maybe is getting the word from God and prophesying to her in that way. It would be the same in the text here, saying that this was basically what the word she got from God. But the way it's written right here, it's just as easily the fact that God is just speaking directly to Rebecca, which is kind of a beautiful thing here for people that might say, there are plenty of people who don't understand this story very well, and they might judge it a little too quickly, saying, well, it doesn't really include women in a positive way. Well, I disagree with that. I mean, clearly here it doesn't seem like God has any issue with talking to the woman, saying that you talked to the man. The first time that the angel of the Lord appeared and spoke, it was to Hagar, right? So there's definitely a lot of this I don't know, it's just kind of a cool thing, right? So something to take in. This happens a lot in the Bible, so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. All right, so the prophecy itself is basically of she has twins, and that they're kind of fighting one another. One of the legends that they're told by by the Jewish people is that they were trying to kill each other, and so that's not in the text here, but maybe, I don't know if they would, you can apply an intent of murder on the babies, but they there's definitely some kind of struggle between them, so much to the point where it really alarmed a pregnant Rebecca. She she had to get this advice, and she was really concerned. So there's definitely a lot going on there, and it's all basically prophetic to there's going to be this struggle between these two kids, and they're going to make two nations entirely. One nation will inherit the promise of God, the inheritance of what God has promised to Abraham, and the other will not, right? So we'll kind of see how that plays out here a little bit. So yeah, and then the last thing right here, one nation will be stronger than the other, and your older son will serve your younger son, which is totally backwards. The older son, which in the case of twins would be whoever's the firstborn, and sometimes what they would do is whichever kid would poke out a limb first, they would tie something on that limb to show like, okay, this was the first kid to touch oxygen, so even if they like pull a limb back in, they know that was the first one to technically be born, and that would be considered the oldest, because the oldest son would inherit everything. I mean, almost everything. Definitely the estate. The oldest one would inherit the position of kind of authority over the family once the father died. They would be the spiritual leader and that sort of thing for the whole family. So this was kind of a big deal. This inheritance is a very big deal. And if you were a younger son, you're just kind of, under the power and authority of that older son. So this is kind of a inverse here that's being predicted. So let's go ahead and read on a little bit to find out a little bit more what happens here, and this conflict that's starting to brew. And then the time came to give birth. And when the time came to give birth, Rebecca discovered that she did indeed have twins. The first one was very red at birth and covered with thick hair like a fur coat. So they named him Esau, which means hairy. Then the other twin was born with his hand grasping Esau's heel. So they named him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born. A little bit about these names right here. So we get Esau as the oldest. He's born first, very hairy, very red. The color red is associated with him a lot, even later in the story. And so then you have Jacob here, and his name is kind of interesting. It doesn't just mean deceiver, but it kind of turns into that with the way that it's given to him. So I'm not the best lingual expert on that. But one other way that word would be used would be like a reinforcing army coming up from the rear against the enemy. It's kind of a deception, but it's like supposed to be in like a positive way. But Jacob definitely wields it in, you'll see, in a typical idea of what you would think of when you think of someone who's being a deceiver, being deceptive. So comes out grasping the heel of Esau, which is this idea that, it's why they gave him the name. It's this idea of a deceiver, someone who's underhanded, that sort of thing. Literally in that situation, their birth. So and you can kind of, you already seeing the conflict between these two kids right here this early on in their life. So very, very interesting stuff. Lots of foreshadowing, right? So let's go ahead and let's jump to the next part here. It's going to be, I think I might just read to the end and then we'll just talk about the whole thing together. So this is going to be as they are older, these two sons, and their interaction with one another. They turn into two very different people. So this is a lot of fun. We'll read that right now. As the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter. He was an outdoorsman, but Jacob had a quieter temperament, preferring to stay at home. Isaac loved Esau because he enjoyed eating the wild game Esau brought home, but Rebekah loved Jacob. One day, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau arrived home from the wilderness, exhausted and hungry. Esau said to Jacob, "I'm starved. Give me some of that red stew." This is how Esau got his name, his other name, Edom, which means red. "All right," Jacob replied, "but trade me your rights as the firstborn son." "Look, I'm dying of starvation," said Esau. "What good is my birthright to me now?" But Jacob said, "First, you must swear that your birthright is mine." So Esau swore an oath, thereby selling all his rights as the firstborn to his brother Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and lentil stew. Esau ate the meal, then got up and left. He showed contempt for his birthrights as the firstborn. All right, so let's see here, real quick. Excuse me for that. All right, so a little bit of breakdown here. So yeah, so we see that two very different people. Esau is very much the hunter type. He's out there, away from the family. And Isaac, this is always so funny to me. So Isaac and Rebecca were doing great all the way up to this point. And now we're starting to see some issues, right? And some character here, some character flaws. Isaac, has a favorite, and it's the son who's bringing him wild game. Now, obviously, there would be the, animals, the herd animals already there at their home, which I'm sure that Jacob tended to and that sort of thing, the sheep and that sort of stuff. But Isaac really liked the wild game, more than he liked the domesticated animals. And so, yeah, for that reason alone, I guess maybe he also thought of his son, his firstborn son, Esau, as just being a manly man going out there hunting. And yeah, Jacob stayed at home with mom, and yeah, probably obviously they had a really close relationship as a result. So once again, now Rebecca has a favorite, and of course, what could go wrong with both parents have a favorite and it's a different child? In general, this is going to be fun, right? So yeah, so kind of getting into this little interaction here, Jacob clearly wants the rights as the firstborn. He sees it as something that's a good thing. He's trying to do something to get it, and he is being deceptive, but not that deceptive, right? He's being straightforward. It's not like he didn't give him the stew. He is catching Esau in a moment of weakness, and he probably knows his brother a little bit. So the Bible in other places refers to Esau as someone who's basically, after pleasure, right? Someone who gives in to, the worldly things too easily. And of course, we see in the situation, Esau is hungry and he's like, I'm going to die. I'm so hungry. He's probably been hunting for a few days and hasn't eaten in a few days, maybe even a week, right? And so now he's really, really wants to eat something. And Jacob is taking advantage of this moment of weakness in his brother that he probably understands very well. He's probably been scheming this for some time. And so, yeah, successfully, Esau even swears an oath. Now, every time in the Bible we've had someone swearing an oath up to this point, it's been a big deal, right? So you had the moment where Abraham's servant swore an oath, put his hand under Abraham's thigh, and then he went and did exactly what he promised in that oath, because it's a serious thing. We saw God making an oath and a covenant with Abraham and his descendants, and we see that this is also a really serious thing. And this is the first time we see this oath really kind of being done in a flippant or non-serious way. He just sold his birthrights for a bowl of soup, and Esau probably didn't even think twice about it. Clearly, it says that he had contempt for his birthrights. He just doesn't care, right? And so he's just doing whatever. And so this shows that God had wisdom and his foreknowledge of saying, hey, this is going to be carried on. The inheritance is going to be given to the younger son. And so now we actually have a legal transaction and a sworn oath between these brothers that does legitimately pass down that claim to the first rights to the second-born son instead of the older son. Now, will Esau hold up to this? Will there be some kind of discord, from that? We will see in the next chapter, because that's where it ends right there. But this will definitely start to get a bit more spicy within this family. There's definitely a lot of dysfunction to make some pretty interesting stories. So we'll definitely get in that in the next couple of chapters here. But yeah, for now, that's it for that. This is a really good introduction into Jacob and Esau. We're going to be getting a lot into Jacob's story. Isaac is kind of just a really quick pass and go character in the Bible. We see some really good things about his character, and now we see some very human flaws in his character as well. Once again, this is a people not chosen for how morally upstanding or naturally good they are, or what they've earned. This is just God's providence and sovereignty and foreknowledge. It's like, hey, I have a plan, and I'm going to do it through these people who haven't earned it on their own merits, and that sort of thing. So it kind of magnifies God's mercy, God's grace, and overall wisdom, right? So with that, we'll kind of wrap up the story right there. If you got any questions, let me know, either in the comments live or afterward. Love to talk about it. And for now, we're just going to go ahead and get back to the front of the ship. We're going to head back to Earth to drop you guys off. So yeah, let's go ahead, make that happen. I guess we'll hit that transition, and I'll see you guys at the front of the ship. All right, all right. So I'm gonna hit this right here. Man, Miranda. That is such an interesting moon. So just here, yeah, I want to hit these details again real quick, especially this one. Like, look at that. That is absolutely insane. The nowhere, just so you guys understand, there's no other body in the solar system that looks like this. Like, this is clearly it's almost like it's a patchwork doll, right? Just something that's been put together in some kind of cosmic way. But yeah, I don't know, it's absolutely crazy. But yeah, let's hit this. Let's go ahead, make sure we make it back to Earth. There we go. That should work. We'll see. But let's see. Yeah. Here we go. Perfect. So yeah, with that, if you guys like the show, be sure to hit that like. In general, what we're trying to do here is essentially tell these stories that brought the world together once, especially Western civilization, and just trying to understand these things, things that have a lot of universal concepts to them, a lot of stuff for us to learn from, and overall just trying to feed positive culture into our society, because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on these days. But we're not here to focus on the crazy stuff. We're here to just focus on what we can do about it, right? Let's see here. That gets us there, right? Let's see. I think that's good. Perfect. Okay, well, with that, appreciate you guys. I got the stuff coming out with still working on the Friday show. It's not gonna be this Friday. That should be, I'd say, I'm trying to shoot for in a couple of weeks. I got some art being done by Julian here, which is going to be really nice to show. So it's already looking amazing. And yeah, it's just basically going to get that next part out. I'll let you guys know. So be sure to hit that subscribe, hit that like, share it with your friends. We'll get more people on board the Silverwind and party it up. Speaking of a party, let's go ahead and hit that outro. And yeah, you guys have a good one. Eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you.
sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my